Did you know in 1890s, 1 in every 3 chefs in Australia was Chinese? Since then, Chinese cuisine has been playing a significant role in hospitality, food, and culture in our communities. One of the very first Chinese restaurants on record could be traced back to 1854, back in the gold rush period. The owner was a Chinese man called John Alu. We're now at the Sovereign Hill Museum in Ballarat, where you can see this recreation of John Alu's restaurant. John first came to Australia as an indentured labourer from Guangdong, China. His restaurant mainly served roasts and puddings and, of course, other Chinese food. It's fair to say that where there were Chinese miners, there would be Chinese cook shops. For example, the well-known goldfields in Victoria and the regional area in Queensland along the northern Palmer River. We're now in Canberra at the National Museum of Australia to look at some pottery shards found at Palmer River. So were these shards part of some bowls that's used by the Chinese miners back then?
That's exactly right, Cotton. These were rice bowls. They were found at an archaeological site in North Queensland, in the Palmer River area. There'd been a big gold rush in that area in the 1870s. And these were found at a site called Atoy's Garden, named after the man who owned that property for about 50 years. And the Palmer River gold rush had very different characteristics than other gold rushes in Australia, because by the end of the 1870s, the vast majority of the miners in the area were Chinese. There were 18,000 Chinese miners and about 1,500 European miners. There were specific foods that were imported from China, from Guangdong, but they were more specialized. You know, it was salted fish, salted eggs, and then there were condiments that you might have added in small doses to your foods, like shark fin and shrimp and caviar, and those were imported by Chinese merchants in Cooktown and then sold on to the miners. Speaking of Chinese Australian food, Chinatown is a must-see. Here we are at the oldest one in the Southern Hemisphere, Melbourne Chinatown. Back then in Melbourne, 1 in 10 restaurants was a Chinese restaurant. However, the prosperity of Chinatown hasn't always been easy. In 1901, the White Australia policy was imposed, which made it very difficult for Chinese people to migrate to Australia. It was not until the 1930s that Chinese chefs and restaurant staff got exemptions to come here, thereby solving the shortage of chefs and other workers in Chinese restaurants. The clients were primarily business people who worked in the CBD area, university students, and other European migrants who had just arrived. Patrons would bring their own saucepans for takeaway food, as it was before takeaway boxes became common. Chicken fried rice and sweet and sour pork were some of the most popular Chinese dishes among Australians. The menu also started to evolve from poultry and fish-based food to one that favored more beef dishes, making Chinese food more accessible in Aussie households. This building used to be Chongwai Cafe, which is possibly the longest continuously operated Chinese restaurant in Victoria. Over 100 years later, the new place is now a contemporary restaurant inspired by Singaporean cuisine, and it's run by 2 Malaysians, Jack and Raymond.
这栋楼原来呢是一栋非常有名的中餐厅，叫做中华酒家 Chongwai Cafe。
有听说过。
那不知道2位有没有兴趣了解一下当年100多年前 Chongwai Cafe 的菜单是什么样的？
当然有兴趣啊！
来看，这是当年 Chongwai Cafe 的菜单，2位看一下有没有熟悉的一些菜式在上面。
芙蓉蛋吧，就是我们小时候经常吃的一道菜。妈妈可能放虾仁啊、叉烧啊、洋葱啊，然后炒一炒，然后就放在蛋里面这样煎。
那我听说，就是在早期，比如说 Chongwai Cafe 他们还在营业的时候，当时嘞就是澳大利亚的顾客们啊，他们最喜欢的中餐口味是酸酸甜甜的这种口感。不知道你们觉得现在的澳大利亚本地顾客，他们的口味有没有发生什么样的变化？
我觉得基本上如果在口味那方面，老口味还存在的，但是在选择上就增加了很多。过去的几十年都有一些新的移民过来啊，就带了他们的菜肴过来，对于那些本地人的那个选择就比较多了。现在如果你说酸甜，你有泰国餐啊，很多中国大陆带过来的美味菜肴啊，澳洲饮食文化真的很发达。
说的我都饿了。那现在我们可不可以尝试一道现在店里很受欢迎的菜？我可以点一道海南鸡饭吗？因为我是从海南来的。
一定可以啊。
这个墨尔本版的海南鸡啊是没有骨头的。
对，我们把骨头去掉，因为我们发现很多本地人呢都不大喜欢吃有骨头的东西。
啊，那我就等不及了，我有开吃了啊。So good. Sometimes you can't help but just feel a bit nostalgic when you have a taste of home. What's your favorite Chinese dish?